Hello, everybody. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it's evening here in the UK. And welcome to another episode of, from the Where It's At team, as it were. And this one we've decided to call If Walls Could Talk. The reasoning behind that title will become apparent as the show progresses. Yes, it's good to be back. And this evening, we're particularly happy to have somebody on to talk about some footage that they've collated and shared with us. And so that's going to be interesting. We'll do that in a few minutes' time once I've got over a couple of housekeeping things that we like to talk about briefly. So we're going to spend the majority of the time talking about some really, really interesting footage and asking some very basic questions, which of course need answering and are very, very difficult to answer, if not impossible. So before we crack on, just like to introduce Ellie. How are you doing?
Hi, Sven. I'm good, thank you. All good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well. Been keeping busy.
Yes, keeping busy. Been a busy day. Been good, productive. So looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. We had a chat with our guest earlier, and I think it would be a very interesting conversation, no doubt.
Yeah, Eric's very interesting. Yeah, and what he's bringing today is absolutely very interesting.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? And it throws up so many massive questions.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So, but before we get to that, what I'd like to do is just briefly say, since last podcast, so a week ago Sunday, we put out a video showing the brick making process. That was from a channel called Primitive Technology. So I would urge anybody who's interested in any of those processes to go and subscribe to them. They've got over 10 million subscribers, but there's some really, really good stuff in there if people want to understand the basics of how certain materials come to be and the complications and difficulties, therefore, to produce bricks to such an extent that you could knock up massive constructions all around the world before you had the capability to produce those bricks in the first place, like I say, to that extent. So that's an interesting video. Anybody who hasn't seen that, do give it a watch. It's about 10 minutes long, and it's basically just showing a gentleman going through a brick making process, and that is exactly how people would have done it on site. So-called brick masons that we're told he always had a handful nearby, funny enough, that worked for free. So you had these guys doing that all day long while they were building massive buildings. Well, I don't think so. But that's an interesting video, so go check that out. And then also it is related, but it isn't. It's on my channel. I put out a video about the Poachstown Centre, which we're gonna also put out here next week at some stage, or maybe the week after. Not too sure yet, because of Easter coming up. But that will be showing you another building here in Boston, where I live. One heck of a building called the Poachstown Centre. So many giveaways to the lies, but that will go out on the Where It's At channel in the next week or two as well. That is out on the SvenP channel. I put that out yesterday, but we want to make it a bit nicer, and I'm going to do a new audio over it as well to go into a bit more detail informationally. So I just thought I'd bring that to you too. So without further ado, before we do, Ellie, was there anything else that I've missed there, apart from the fact that, of course, you could take an opportunity to say hello to the chat?
No, I think you mentioned everything really at the moment as to where we are at with everything. I'll just quickly shout the chat out. So Ken Claudio's here. Hello, Ken. And anybody that's watching, anyone lurking, hello to you too, and we hope that you enjoyed the stream today. And any questions, if you can post them in chat, and I'll pick some out, and then we'll put them to Eric as well later on.
Yes, I think that's
so we're
good.
Going to videos, haven't we?
I think that's good to do that, because once you see some of the footage, I mean, it just raises lots and lots of questions, doesn't it? So,
it does, yes. Without further ado, shall we bring Eric?
Yeah, please do.
Excellent.
How's it going, Eric?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Everything good?
Yeah. Hi, Eric.
Hey, how y'all doing? Good to be with y'all.
Everything fine, my friend. Thank you for coming on. How you been
No
keeping?
problem.
Had a good weekend?
Yeah, good busy weekend. Really good day yesterday. Did a few things. Got outside. Weather's been unbelievably great in my part of the country. A real spring, nice cool spring. So it's been great.
Nice, nice. They've stopped using the bad weather machines for a week or two. That's good to hear. Eric, you have been so kind to come on our podcast, stream, show, whatever people like to call it, to discuss with us, some footage that you put out on your channel that I personally, and Ellie, but everyone else who I know who's seen it, find absolutely fascinating. Would you like to just mention what it was that you did, why you thought of doing it, and kind of give us just a very brief gen on it before we kind of start looking at some of the footage that you sent?
Yeah, well, now I live in Louisiana, but for 15 of the last 20 years almost, I lived in Pensacola, Florida. And the video is a video of a fort called, video of a fort called Fort Pickens. It's on, people would say it's right by Pensacola Beach on Santa Rosa Island. And interested in it because, like we were talking before the show, I'm a history buff, and I grew up a little bit of a war buff because of the amount of military that's in my family. And, I just love going to sites like that, old sites, and seeing them. And it's was interesting, and a lot of people, recommended to go see it. So I went, and it was an awesome experience. It's very vast, big. Never seen brickwork, of course, like that before. And anything old and like that, I just enjoy looking at and enjoy, and I like taking videos too. So
Yeah.
it was a good experience.
Well, that's a good opportunity to combine the two, isn't it? I found that's what I'm doing now as well, is if I walk past something nice and old or whatever, the first instinct almost is to grab my phone and activate the video,
Well, especially in America, what we call old and y'all call old is two different things. Not as much history here, but it's right there in Pensacola. The town was pretty much started by the U.S. government as the military. There was a settlement of Europeans there before, but very small. But the town really took off because of the military base and fort we're talking about. Really made people move there, work there. A big part of Pensacola.
Yeah, I mean, again, we have to be talking for myself here a little bit cautious when it comes to mainstream media, but I would hedge a bet. Actually, I would actually suggest that the Americans have the same history as us, pretty much. I think they've done so much tweaking and rewriting and all sorts of inserting, deleting, and whatnot. That I think I think the mainstream history has misled us there in a big way, because how else would you expect? How else would you explain, I should say, some of the buildings that are found in America, just like they are in Europe? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess I should say it's kind of a joke here in the U.S. that, we just don't have the amount of standing or the amount of buildings that y'all have that are that supposedly old, in Europe. That's all I meant about that.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, there's rune stones, especially in the middle of this country, that are Swedish, that are Viking. And I don't know if I'm sure y'all heard about all of the stuff in the desert as far as Egyptian relics and everything in the Grand Canyon. And I think there's thousands and thousands and thousands of years of history in the U.S. that is not in the history books because they'll be rewritten if they put them in, about the Vikings making it here, about the Chinese making it here, about the Egyptians making it here. You know, that we all have archaeological evidence of that somehow doesn't make it into history books.
Yeah, it's well, that's the question, isn't it? The somehow bit is the bit that raises eyebrows, because why isn't it in the history books? And this is the thing. You know, you can walk down the embankment in London or walk through the centre of Paris, and you'll find the same construction in the form of a massive big obelisk that's supposed to be from Egypt, for example, hundreds of tons in weight or whatever, however heavy these things are. You know, so we clearly have a history in our countries that are not Egyptian at all, but they're connecting with that country so as to fall in line with the narrative that's been created for all our individual nations, right? So I think that's what's happened. And the more you look into it like we're doing, the more that becomes absolutely apparent, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. On every continent, there seems to be there's obviously temples or pyramids in every part of the world that are similar. It's hard to think that they all came up with that kind of separate. So I think people have been traveling the seas and traveling around for many of thousands of years that somehow history doesn't really want to talk about. So it's a lot of similarities, at least a couple of things in almost every culture in the world, it seems like.
Yes, I think so. And I think part of the smokes and mirrors is the notion of nations and individual not individual peoples and citizenships and nationalities. I think that's what often throws people as well, because they buy into the official narrative at school, of course, because they're taught it. Then people get the impression the Australian history is younger than the British one, for example, unless you talk about the Aborigines, or the New Zealand history is not as old unless you talk about the Maoris. And it's all this, which I think is total nonsense, because these buildings that we're finding in all of these countries that we're talking about are way older than what we've been told, because guess what? The ground has raised up a few levels in that time, quite clearly. What we will call the mud flood thing. That, all right, those who aren't aware of it, I think that's a very, very important fact that has to be highlighted. So how do people explain that? And there's all sorts of things like that. And it's worldwide. It's worldwide. Like you said, how did they get that information to each other to be able to almost copy the architecture throughout the world? Yeah. I mean, it's mind-blowing, isn't it? Ellie, what do you say?
I'm just listening, taking it all in. It's very, very interesting. So would you like to, should I play the first?
Sure.
See the fort that Eric is talking about, and I think once they do see it, they'll be even more fascinated. It's very stunning to see, and there's a lot more to it that Eric's going to tell you all about shortly. So without further ado, here's the first part of the video. So I hope you all enjoy. What's that, Eric?
Oh no, I was about to ask y'all, so from what y'all seen on the video, y'all haven't seen much of anything like that in Europe, as far as the fortification or brickwork?
There's buildings that are quite vast in Europe and that, but I've not seen a fort like this, so to speak.
Okay.
There are star forts around Europe that are similar, but I've not actually been to them myself personally. Okay. But
around Europe, but I've not actually personally been to one as yet. But that's going to change very soon. So here we go. Yeah. So the video, it's just over 3 minutes long, and it's just you'll hear Eric talking in it and everything. So enjoy.
Do you want me to comment about it? Okay. I feel like I'm in the Maginot Line. It's flooded. Now I feel like I'm in Hitler's bunker. What are these? It's like catacombs. They're little bitty. Wow.
So that was the first part. That was the first part of the video that we're going to be showing. So we're doing it in two parts. So Eric, when you went there, I heard you saying a couple of things about it reminded you of the Maginot Line, and also you said something about Hitler's bunker as well, right? Because it has
Yeah.
it has that solidity about it. You could imagine how bunkers are constructed, right? But what was your first impressions when you got there and saw that?
Just kind of wow, because I seen it was made out of all brick, and I've never seen brick being used like that as far as all the arches, because it just seems like everything's an arch, because of to give strength, to the walls, and just all the rooms and the complexity of it, and I'm like a little kid when it comes to that stuff, because trying to figure out what's what. When I went into them. When I went into one of those little bitty tunnels that you saw, and towards the end, they even got smaller. That was all for black powder for the cannons and stuff. And it's just I don't know. It just amazes me, all of that engineering, because you kind of grow up with the narrative from school that everybody that's everybody that's you come before you is not as smart as you,
Right.
and they can't build as good as you, and they can't do all of these things, I guess. So you kind of even more awe of it because it's older, and they were able to do all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
My probably
And
first impressions.
Yeah, right. And isn't that the thing that should really be making people think immediately, shouldn't it, really? Which is, how would they have built that if they didn't have I mean, if you just knew about a little bit about basic history, things like Industrial Revolution and things like, how would you build that amount of bricks to use them? I mean, they're not just using bricks, they have to make them first. Well, in fact, they have to quarry them first. But so those catacombs, they almost look like, because I've seen some similar things. I saw a similar thing in France when I went to Mont Saint Michel. They had like the areas like that, and it almost looked like they were like canal ways, like tunnel ways for water or for liquids, big amounts of water, because they're almost too narrow to walk down as a human. You know what I mean? They're very, very narrow.
Well, we were told, this is. I took this video around 2012, somewhere around there, and I did. I think this was after we, a little, just in a very small one. One of the park rangers, bring you around just that circle and tell you what everything is and for. And if I remember correctly, they said that's all for gunpowder storage. The little ones, and going down the one to the court when we came out into the inner court of the fort, I think was where they stacked the cannonballs. So I mean, they had their little explanations for what everything was.
Right.
But, yeah, they said it was for storage of the powder.
Yeah, right. So, and in order to store stuff as a human, you'd have to be going in and out of there storing it.
Yeah.
There ain't much space, is there?
No, and I'll tell you this. I do remember there are openings, through and I don't have it, I think, in this video. I mean, I probably have 30 minutes of videos or whatever, maybe not that much, but 20 minutes. In some of the areas, and of course we do know that I think back then they were a little shorter than what we are now, or so they tell us. But there are definitely some doorways that are 4-5 foot, and I'm not a tall man. I'm 5'9", and I had to duck to go through them. So,
yeah. But I mean,
it is kind of weird. And I don't know, like you said, I don't know how you would stack gunpowder. How are you going to go down that little bit of category all the way down there and put a casing of gunpowder? I mean, that's got to be pretty hard to retrieve because there's no way you can move.
No. And if you ask the guide who's telling you all this when you're walking around, like you have a guide here at Stonehenge or wherever it is, and they'll tell you the narrative in many different languages if you fancy, they'll have an explanation, like you said earlier. They'll have some sort of basic explanation, and people won't really. They might have a little question about, "Ooh, that must have been hard," but that will be as far as it goes.
Yeah.
You're
not gonna, really sit there and question it at the time because you haven't either had time to think about it or whatever. So you're just gonna take, whatever they say.
Yeah, you're going to take whatever they say because everything has been, discovered, hasn't it? You know what I mean? There's nothing left to discover. So we've got an explanation for everything. That's what we're kind of, that's the impression we're given, isn't it? Not to raise too many questions, but to just go with it because that's what we're told by much cleverer people.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, that's what it is. I mean, unless we dig up things on our own and try to do as much investigation as we can.
Yeah.
On it, and it's hard to get sources, direct sources sometimes also, but a lot of things they tell us don't really add up, but that's for sure.
So when we look at this fort, right, just a quick background. So when about roughly was it built that you found out, and what kind of one or two pillar stones of information that you found out that we're all supposed to just accept and go, okay, that makes sense, when of course it doesn't.
Okay, well, in the early 1800s, I think it was 1812 that the U.S. military really wanted to fortify a lot of positions around the East Coast, West Coast, the Gulf Coast, on the waters of the U.S. And in 1928 is when they started with this fort here, Fort Pickens. A guy by the name of Captain William Chase, made up his list of what he needed for construction for it. It was actually designed by a few engineers, one of them French. It is on the so-called, they call it a bastion star pattern, which people see throughout all of the Earth. This one not quite as spectacular as others, like at West Point in the United States and stuff, but it is a star pattern. But he started gathering material in I guess order for bricks and everything in 1928, and the construction started in May of 29, and it ended in 1834. And if you want me to go everything with the bricks now, I will.
Well, just as a little taster. Just as a little taster before we look at the second part, that that we have, and then we can go into a little bit more detail on that. But just as a little taster, aperitif, as it were, this chap, this awfully clever chap who did all the ordering and had to itemize his list, you know, tools, manpower, food for the people who were building it, where they had to sleep, clothing, all that sort of stuff. How many bricks did he calculate he needed?
Well, I don't know about the calculation, but it ended up with 21.5 million bricks in that one fort.
I mean, if you could see me now, I'm just sat here with a big smile on my face, shaking my head, because it's like in 1820s. Yeah,
so that's from say maybe they started in 1829.
Right.
You know, so that's 5 years.
Right.
So that's 5 years. And from what I've calculated, that would mean roughly, rough math, 50,000 bricks a day.
Right. Constructing them, by the way.
During that time.
Yes. So we're talking about they would have to have built 50,000 a day to end up with a construction like that.
Yes, in that time frame.
Right.
50,000 bricks a day.
Right. And when you think that according to the official narrative, and this is most sources that you look at out there, all of them, or pretty much really, they are talking about they didn't manage to get to the productivity of 10,000 bricks a day until the 1920s, 100 years later. Right. So
the research that I looked at, I tried to look at, you know, brick making, and I went through and tried to get numbers and time periods. And from what I read, the early factories into the early 1800s, a typical, now, you know, this is not like, you know, I would guess a small operation, but the typical brick factory could produce 3,500 to 5,000 bricks a day. That's what they claim.
Right. And
by the 1880s, like you said, I got they were able to do about 50,000 a day.
Right. Okay. Well, that's contrary to the information that we looked at and found out. But there you go. So
okay.
Yeah. So you have, well, that's a tactic, isn't it? Because that's what they're doing with a lot of other topics, which we won't go into here. But it's obfuscation, it's confusion, it's contradictory, it's hypocritical, and it's supposed to.
And I ran into that doing this also.
Right.
I ran into some dates and some numbers, like with bricks, because some of the bricks, I mean, I could tell you where they come from. There were at least 8 that I could find, and this was a Pensacola site, like a history of Pensacola site. There were 8 brick factories that contributed to the fort,
right?
You know, around Pensacola, as far as in the Bay, and they still have some of those brick factories there in ruin that they have as like memorial. But yeah. So they had 8 that was around Pensacola, and they also, it said they drew from a couple of places around New Orleans, and one factory in Mobile. Mobile, Alabama is called, and one in Mississippi.
So how far away are these How far away are these places roughly from Pensacola?
Okay, New Orleans, I'm 255 miles. So New Orleans would be about 180 miles straight due east, west of Pensacola. And of course you have a port there, you know, where you can, you know, if you could take them by sea.
Right.
And that's supposedly, you know, what they did and how they did. And interesting, they said the lime, you know, that they would put on the brick, you know, that you see on the video, you know, it's like a plaster, the white lime. They said most of that was shipped from Maine. Right.
Well, the reason why I'm asking that is because I have a problem with the land transportation options. Because you're talking about the 1820s, 1830s.
There was none.
Yeah, exactly. There was none. Exactly.
Yeah.
There were certainly no rail networks, and even when rail networks were starting to be developed at the end of the 19th century, you didn't have a train going to the back of everybody's house. You had hubs, and there were very few of them because the rail network were in its infancy, right? So
Yeah.
when you're thinking that you've got to transport material 180 miles across terrain that wouldn't have been built out, there would have been no infrastructure, no nothing. There would have been no roads. According to the mainstream, there can't have been. Let's put it like that. Maybe old civilizations did have roads because maybe they must have had transportation methods that we don't know of. Because how on earth would you get that amount, that volume, to and fro anywhere? It just wouldn't be possible. It would just be simply impossible. I'll give you an example, right? Because you were mentioning the horses. If you go to Salisbury in England, there's a Guildhall building there, and on the back of it, there's like a sign, and it explains to you how the message was passed across the south coast of England to announce that Britain had beaten Napoleon in the Napoleonic Wars, in the war in the Battle of Waterloo. Right? They had to change the horse over 40 times to travel a distance of about 80 miles, 90 miles to get from one place to London to get the news out. So if you're thinking about horses required to transport massive loads and weights across country, well, you'd be there all decade. It just wouldn't happen. Sorry, I went off on a bit of a monologue there. I didn't mean to, but you know what I mean?
No, that's all right. We had the same kind of thing. Excuse me. It was called the Pony Express in America. That did a lot with mail. The same way, the same way you talking about. It would be horses one after another. That would be galloping fast, and it takes so many horses. Right. That's how they used to spread news. They say here also.
In fact, I have to throw a disclaimer in there. I made a mistake. It wasn't the Battle of Waterloo that was announced in the south coast of England. It was about the Trafalgar Battle. So it was the one where Nelson, allegedly, our great admiral, died on his ship. So anyway, that was the battle that was being announced, not Waterloo. I just wanted to make that clear. Yeah, but it's just interesting because, people don't seem to think about the fact that transportation systems were just simply not in place. They just weren't there.
No, I do recall her saying, thinking about this more and more, that the bricks, a lot of the bricks were transported via barge.
By a barge.
Yeah, for a barge. If I remember right, I'm pretty sure I remember saying that.
Yeah, they say that here with a lot of stuff as well, that, they had canal networks that were built in the 19th century, 2,000 miles worth. I think Ellie and I were talking about this last week. And you're like, well, okay, but again, how do you build all those canals? With what?
Yeah.
So again, it just leads you to, it's a proper rabbit hole, isn't it, really?
Yeah, that's what made, you're talking about how, in the late 1800s is when the brick factories really got started and were able to produce more bricks. Me reading about it, they call it the steam shovel. That was one of the inventions that, to use steam power to dig, into them rivers, and get the clay. Yeah. And all of that stuff. And that's what I'm envisioning while I'm saying all this.
Right.
So you got people by hand going into the river or going into the Bay of Pensacola and getting all of this clay. And, I read a little bit about how they put it together and how they fire it and what they use the sand for and stuff. And it's a whole lot of work. It would take a whole lot of people to even come close to what they're thinking about.
Well, that's a very important point. And the reason why brick factories and stuff weren't up and running until the 1880s properly was because they had to have the transport network a little bit in place to be able to get the bricks out of the factories and off to the sites. So that in itself, people can't be saying, not that you are, but other people I've heard that have been saying, well, that maybe they had factories back in the beginning of the 19th century. Well, even if they did, like we were mentioning earlier, how would you get all that material, manpower, and everything else around at all in the first place? It just wouldn't.
Well, it's like you said, they have to, and they have to, pretty much do it right on site. They have to have all of the bricks or most of the bricks, coming on site. It definitely would seem like you say.
Yeah. and then good luck trying to dry all your bricks before you even put them in a kiln.
Yeah.
It's
Florida
crazy,
gets,
isn't it?
I don't know if you noticed, but you know, I can't convert it to centimeters, but you probably still remember inches.
Yes,
Florida
2.5 inches is about. No, hang on a minute. What 2.5 centimeters is about an inch, roughly.
Okay, so you know we get about the same rain here as there. You get 65 inches of rain a year, so that's 130 centimeters, you know, a year. So, you know, I mean, maybe they could keep them, you know, dry with something, but you know, this is a subtropical environment. You know, it's not a normal environment when you get down close south to the Gulf of Mexico. This is
Well,
all category subtropical.
I'm sure they would have used their British prisoner of war to do all that because the Brits are very used to the rain. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
but yeah, no, you know, I just find it an absolutely mind blowing topic when we talk about it like this because it just it's unbelievable.
Yeah, the numbers are staggering.
Yeah, absolutely. Ellie, do you fancy putting on the second part of what you had prepared?
Yeah, I will do. I'll pop that
Thank
on
you.
there. Thank you. Okay, so this is the second part of Eric's video, and it takes you more outside of the build.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay, so here we go.
What are these? It's like catacombs. They're little bitty. Wow. Going over the wall. Fort Pickens I'm in Pensacola, Florida. It's built before the Civil War in the 1840s. End of the line, I'm not jumping down there. I'm on the top of the wall here and I'll show you something funny. These little slots, they're air slots for the rooms that are beneath them. Cool. entrance. Gun swivels for the cannon.
Thank you, Ellie. So
sharing with us, it's fantastic.
yeah, so just to pick up on that then, the message that Ellie put on there right at the end was, if anybody has any questions, please do share them with us. In the meantime, Eric, those slits that you saw on the side, by the way, I'm glad you opted out of the idea of jumping off that wall, by the way. I'm glad that you didn't. Very good. Wise move.
No, I just wanted to lean the camera over just to, get the effect that, that you're, it's about 15 feet.
Yeah.
I guess that would be about what? About 5 meters, 6 meters?
Yeah,
about 5 meters.
Something like that. It's about what, 3 feet to a meter, roughly, a bit more.
Yeah,
maybe.
that was lowered. That was lowered right there, because I didn't put this in there, but there's a battery inside of the fort that was built later, because believe it or not, all of that brick by the Civil War, which was in the 1860s, was pretty obsolescent because the new rifled cannons, the brick couldn't hold up to them, so they built a little battery inside, and they lowered the wall for a better sight line. But on the other side, it's another 2-3 meters higher.
But I've got to say that even some of the arches, right? You were mentioning earlier in the first part of the podcast that, or was it backstage? I can't remember now, but you were saying something about how people have grown probably with time, and hence the doorways are a little bit lower or smaller, right? Which you do see a lot. You see it a lot in England as well. However, how about the theory that actually it's the ground level that's higher up, which makes all the entrances look smaller, and it gives us that illusion that maybe because that's supposed to fit in the narrative as well. Because I noticed there on your footage that a lot of the archways, they look a bit bottom heavy. We said this about a lot of churches here in the UK, for example, that the entrance looks like there's more to it going down. If you took a step back and looked at it, what's your take on that?
And I almost said that when I almost kind of said that when I was talking about that it definitely could be that going up. I thought of that also, but because they do have most of the entrances that that it's humans going through, with all of the rooms that are 7 foot tall. But it could be like naval ships. You know how naval ships, you go through them, they have a smaller door.
Sure.
It could be something like that.
It could be. It could be that. The only thing that makes me confused a bit about the whole idea of the us and that we've changed size a little bit. Not that you're saying that. I'm just saying that's what I've heard that lots of times, and we were taught that at school as well, because our nourishment wasn't as good and all that. Again, we weren't as good and advanced then as we are now, right? It plays into that narrative of how we've so much progressed as a civilization, right? More illusion, more nonsense, more BS. Because we haven't progressed at all. But I was going to come to a point there that I've forgotten, of course, because I was thinking of 2 or 3 different things at once.
Well, let me say this, that, on the bottom level, it's pretty much, I think, where it should be, because, all of those cannons, all of those arches at the bottom, they have slits in the wall, and the walls at places are literally 7-8 foot. That's almost 3 meters thick. Right. By those where those cannons go, but you can still see the traversing piece of steel for the wheels on the carriage of the cannon so they can go right to left. So those should be where, the ground floor.
Right.
Because, everywhere in the fort, that I've been in that old fort looks like it should be where it's at, because you can still see all of that on the ground.
Right. This is the point I was going to make earlier. And I'll get back to that one just then as well. But the bit with the small entrances, then why on earth would they build massive arched entrances for churches if people were so small? You know what I mean? That doesn't make sense. One minute you're building big architecture where you feel like an ant, and the next minute you can't fit into your Tudorian house here in England, right? So it's like, well, which one is it here, guys? But getting back to your concrete thing, I mean, there are many ways to dress up an old site and make it look a bit more modern, right?
Maybe. You never know.
I'm just speculating again, you know what I mean? But
you could be.
Because it reminded me a lot of the bunker, the bunkers that you see, for example, in Germany and France and all that. They've got a lot of bunkers, especially Germany, and you're thinking, well, when did they build all them? But they have those turret mounts that you're talking about, the ones with the arc, where you can go 180-degree arc for your gunfire or whatever. And they have a lot of them as well on the top of a bunker. Why would you have them on the top of a bunker? What are you going to do? Shoot down the planes? And all that sort of stuff. And you think, well, that seems like they're dressing it up to kind of maybe hide something.
Maybe. You could be right.
I don't know. So you were saying this is part of a complex of a couple of others as well, right?
Yes. Pensacola Bay, reading it, was deemed, because it was kind of like it was a natural deep water kind of port. So it was very important. So they built like a little ring. You have the island, the west part of Santa Rosa Island, which they call Pensacola Beach, which this fort is built on. It's all the way on the west side of the island. And just across the water, 3-4 miles, you have another fort that was built. It was very small. You had another fort that was built, and on land, further north, they had another fort right by where, it's inside of the Naval Air Station that is there today. Fort Baracus was part of that. That was more of a defense and storage. It's not actually a really big fort. In Fort McRae, like we had said before, it didn't last too long. Once pretty much after the Civil War in the 1860s, they pretty much quit using that for one reason or another. Because it was too unstable in the sand. Somebody didn't engineer it right, is kind of what they said.
Right. So they finished building it and then decided it could at some point become too unstable in the sand. Well, that's a good way of doing it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So something messed up there.
So to put it into perspective, this complex has 22 million bricks.
Yes, it said 21.5 million bricks.
And
it's just so I mean, it's to me, it's so impressive to see all of the work with the brick. It really is. To me, it's impressive that they could do that. But that's a lot of bricks for 5 years.
And that's the question, isn't it? Who then did do that? Because were we capable of that in the time that we're told, with the methods at our disposal that we're told we had? Well, the clear answer
to believe
has to be no. Yeah.
It's definitely hard to believe that, even with the information that they give, and knowing how they have to do it by all manual labor. They did, per se, rent out slaves, to help with it, because America still had slaves in the South back then. They don't really, and this is the funny thing, what we all talking about with this and why you have so many questions, because when you're looking at some of these numbers, they don't give you numbers,
right?
Of how many people actually work there, of where, like you said, they slept. I couldn't find nothing on that. So a lot of that part is pretty sketchy, and I couldn't find anything.
things like what did they eat? I mean, and all sorts of those questions, and where did they store all their food and perishable goods and this, that, and the other, hygiene. I mean, there's 1,000 things that you have to think about if you've got thousands of men and probably women and kids, living and working on a site to construct something like this. I mean, look at those arches on the picture there, now on the screen there now that Ellie's just put up. That looks like there used to be water there, what we're looking at, right? That looks like you've drained a canal and there's the aqueduct kind of thing. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, it does look like aqueduct, you're right.
Right? That is what it looks like. So that is, I think, what all those underground systems, as it were probably used for, probably to channel water or whatever it was they were using for whatever purpose, I don't know. But clearly it's like a bastion fort from above. The symmetry is there. We know that they're all over the world. We still struggle to understand how on earth would they get that know-how to each other across the whole world and build these things everywhere. How did they build them, and what was their purpose? Really, what was their purpose? I mean, there's lots of speculation, but we don't really know. But that that is certainly,
According to narrative, it says that with Fort Pickens, there's hidden underfoot, right, a web of wood beams and reverse brick arches. And apparently, when this was first, when construction began, it says that enslaved labourers apparently began digging into the island, and they installed a heavy framework of wooden beams, and then obviously that then sort of, I think, was nation, and then they built, apparently, according to narrative, and the amount of bricks that are used and how they was, I just find it very, very fascinating, and there's more to this build, to look into, definitely.
But that what we're seeing there definitely resembles the bottom of a canal that's been dried up or drained.
To me it does. Yeah, to me it does.
To me, it definitely does.
When you were walking around, Eric, the arches, and when you're walking through inside, and then the little sort of tunnels and how narrow it goes, you can feel it going down more as you were walking. You can see there was definitely more.
There was definitely what? I'm sorry.
It feels like it would go lower.
Yeah, it does go lower, and that's, I think, some of the reason why, when I made that joke about Hitler's bunker, I said that because in the video, I remember seeing a clip from in the 80s or whatever, when they went back into there and it's all covered with water at the bottom. That island, when you go to the fort, there's a lot of low-lying places, of course, because it's an island, and there's a lot of fresh water. It almost looks like swamp, that's in there. And one of the things during the construction, and they talked about the amount of sand that they had to bring there, just to get it up to a level that they kind of, I guess, maybe could do that or whatever. So. You're talking about water, so that that's what made me think about that, Sven. Because it's a low, look, the sea is right there, so if you dig, you get water.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And you know what? You have plenty of constructions that are under sea level as well, which raises up also lots of questions, right? But yeah, you look at the picture there. I mean, that's just. That seems like it goes far, far deeper into the ground. That's not just going to go a yard further deep and that's it. That's going to go further low. I mean,
it's like you're looking at the top of it. Sure, it's like squashed.
Yeah.
See.
Well, the only things, maybe they had the cannons high, but like I'm telling you, the only thing on all of those things that you're saying, they still have the steel strip that the cannon traversed on. So
that would
be the only thing.
Yeah, And like I say, with the questions that we kind of ask, it wouldn't surprise me. In fact, I'm presuming very strongly that that's been put there to
Yeah, maybe.
deflect us a little bit, deflect us away from the truth. I think so. But yeah, you could repurpose these places and use them for cannon mounts. Maybe they actually did use them in certain situations, but who knows?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about on that picture there. Yeah, okay.
Right.
You can see it. Yeah. Okay.
See that?
Yes, definitely possible.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ellie.
The whole thing is just, I'm trying to work it out in my head.
Yeah.
When I look at like this picture here and this, it just
Another magnificent construction that we don't really know the answer to. And
this is the bit where actually there's a lot of water as well.
Yeah, well, that's about a courtyard. That was just because it rained the night before. But in the video, you remember we were going down and they had water.
Yeah, it did.
Towards the bottom of it. Yeah. But, you know, and it's leaking all over the place. I remember going through it. When you go through a lot of the arches, a lot of it, I don't know why.
Yeah.
I guess from all of the humidity and all, it's like raining in there a little bit, even though it's dry. It's kind of weird.
It's all the little sort of narrow tunnels, isn't it? And
yeah, the floor is pretty wild. The floor that you see there, because it's all brick and it's you know, it's at least very old. You know, and you got it's in bed of sand, so that's why it looks all kind of wavy, and it's very, very, very used. You know, I could, that's for sure.
Well, you know,
Absolutely.
I mean, it surprises me that you wouldn't use concrete for that, right? Concrete is supposed to go back thousands of years if we're supposed to believe the narrative. Yeah. So why aren't they making good use of the sand that's all around that area and making their own concrete? Why would you put bricks down on your ground and use that as your flooring, for example? That is just far too much work.
Well, they look it up on the history of it. They had some brick factories already in Pensacola, because Pensacola they said gave brick to this Fort Jefferson in Key West, Florida.
Right.
So, you know, maybe they they wanted to use all brick. You know, I don't know, but they did have that already there. So maybe that was good enough to start with the floor, because they already had it. You know,
maybe.
So
maybe, yeah. Who knows? Some interesting questions, never-ending questions, actually. Really.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, have you got any plans to take a look at anything else in the near future, Eric? Have you got any ideas? Is there anything nearby to where you are that you think might be worth taking a closer look at?
I was kind of, I was thinking that when y'all, were doing the other videos with the tower and stuff, and I grew up pretty close to New Orleans. I knew New Orleans best. And New Orleans has some of the oldest buildings in the U.S., believe it or not. They still have a brick. I think it's brick. They have the oldest apartment complex in the U.S. in the French Quarter. That might. I actually have a few pictures of it, but I couldn't. We have a minor basilica that's been there since the early 1800s. But I couldn't think of any building per se to go look at, in New Orleans. But there's a lot of brick. There's a lot of brick buildings. In New Orleans.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. Look at that photo there. Does that not look like that used to once contain liquid? That area. I personally think that looks like that would have been filled with water or something.
Maybe.
It could be. It's that area. that area, one of the walls was done away with it, so it was enclosed.
Right.
You know, it was enclosed at one time. They call it on the map. If you look at the map, I think it's on the first second of the video, but they call it the parade ground. You know how military, you know, they usually have a big ground. It's a term that whenever you look at forts or stuff like that, open area, that's what they call it.
Yeah.
So that's what they call it, the parade ground.
Yeah.
It's a big area. It's nice.
Yeah, we have a similar thing in the UK. We call them parade squares. And that's where they do the practicing for their whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they call it. But yeah, it was, you know, all enclosed. Some of the wall they kind of destroyed after the Civil War. I guess plans for something else, or to build that fort, like I was telling y'all, that's inside of the old fort. They built They built another a gun battery in the late 1800s to early 1900s that is inside those walls. So I guess to get material in, they knocked, you know, some of that stuff down. So you don't see that wall to enclose it anymore.
Yeah. That's a nice image there, isn't it? I think that's quite telling, that image.
Yeah. That's the outer wall you see, you know, to the back.
Right.
And they got a berm on it, you know, with more rooms under that.
So you've almost got like a moat area there, like you would see in a classic fortification, where you
on the outside of that, they have a wall, that kind of a small wall. You seen it on a part of the video at the end of where I was walking. Right before where I want
thing, doesn't it?
Huh?
It has like a little ventilation, you know, the rooms in the wall.
Well, that's for firing position. Yeah, that's what they say. You know, that's for where a cannon can be used. Those are the walls that are the thickest, like I was telling you. You know, those walls are, you know, like over 2 meters thick. Yeah. Of just brick.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's the outer wall. That's the main outer wall that I was walking on. And of course, that's just a little over a meter right there, you know, thick at the top. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Stunning, isn't it?
Yeah.
And on those, if she keeps on going to the bricks, that's what I was going to say. Every brick that I've seen that, you know, when you walk on that, you know, it's great that they let you do that, because in most places in the U.S. that would become some kind of safety thing that would, you know, not let you go up there or whatever. But I don't know. Maybe I wasn't supposed to be there and I didn't care. I don't know. But some of the bricks have overturned on the top, and you can see the stencil. I don't know if y'all call it the same in the UK. You can see the stencil on the brick that says St. Joe.
Right.
You know, it's writing that's on the brick. You know, it's I think in that video, didn't they have it? You know, at the bottom they put like a little writing, and you put it in there and it puts it in the brick. And that brick was from New Orleans. It said St. Joe on it. That's the brickyard in New Orleans. But that's the one that was cut down that I was telling y'all.
Right.
You know, 5 feet. That's the one that was cut down. And that's what I wanted to tell you about discrepancies. And, you know, they say that later brick came from New Orleans, and they give years that doesn't seem the right years for what they did stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like we said earlier, right? How on earth would you transport all of that 180 odd miles?
Yeah, you'd have to go by sea is the only way. Like you said, they don't, you know, they can't. What they go put 700 horses on a wagon?
Dear.
There it is. And that's the clip.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I'll be devil's advocate and say you can add them to the bricks at a later date and make it look like they came from that factory.
Possible.
Because not all
Definitely
bricks
possible.
if you look at the brown bricks beneath them or the red ones, there's nothing on them.
Well, the only thing, they're not at the top, so
Right.
they're all face down with the stencil.
Right.
So, but that's the only, what you would say, to make a pun, concrete proof
Right.
that that them bricks came from St. Joe, that was outside of New Orleans.
Yeah. Yeah.
You couldn't see anything else.
But then, of course, the
give
other
away.
bricks, if the other bricks have the stencil underneath and they're in the wall, then we can't
you
verify
can't.
that.
Yeah, you can't unless I take a sledgehammer.
A very big one. Yeah. But it's interesting because either way, either they're trying to cover it up by adding that on there, or it actually was from that place. And if that's the case, then wow, I'd like to have known who worked there and who produced all of that for this complex here, right? Because that is a lot of material. I mean, you'd be working 24/7. It's just madness to think that was even possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's fascinating nevertheless. Absolutely. And there, I was going to mention that earlier, Ellie, and you just had the picture up there, which you were talking about the slits in the side of the wall, right?
Yeah,
What did you
On
make
top of the wall.
Yeah, what did you make of that?
I really don't know. I really don't know. Is it some kind of would it help the wall to absorb a shock? I mean, I really don't know the answer to that, because below that is like what she's seen earlier with the traverse for gun slots, because they said that you could fit 150 cannons in this place. So, all of them outer walls with all of the little, from the outside, you see the slits, they have some kind of mechanism, a cannon or something, or it's a firing position. And those are just holes right on top. So I don't know, maybe they wanted some rain or sunlight. I don't know about that one, but I don't have an educated answer on that one.
That's interesting. I don't know either, but that's interesting. Might be worth checking out somehow. Yeah.
But they have them there. They have them in some of the big rooms that they have. You look at the top and they got a slit. And like, it's not like they need air. They need airflow, because the thing is, it's open air, so it's some kind of engineering something. I don't know. I wanted to, I don't know. I wish you'd have said something about it.
No, I don't know either. But I just noticed you
remember.
mentioned it when you walked past it, when you were looking at it. But
yeah.
I just find it interesting.
Ellie, anything else you want to ask about that?
No, I'm just I want to look more into it because I'm interested in that as well, particularly what they're for.
Yeah.
And just let me say this too. We talk about brick. If you look at this picture, to the right, that's the top of all of those arches that you've seen from the back.
Right.
With where the gun placements are, and all of that is brick. Even I mean, everything is brick. It's just all brick.
Yeah.
With some lime on top of it, and I think in later years they even you can see some cement, some gray cement. They tried to overlay some cement on top of that. So, but yeah, I just never seen nothing with that many bricks. It's just bricks everywhere.
I mean, I've seen lots and lots of brick and stuff, but this is like
On a massive scale.
I mean, 21.5 million bricks.
When I saw that, I just freaked out. I said, man, 21 million. I said, how could, and I started, putting in my mind, well, if it's 6 meters, if it's 3 meters thick and you got this and that, maybe it's right, but that's
Well, this is the key bit, Eric. I think for my brain at least, and that is that when I think about numbers like that, 22 million bricks. Because let's go up a bit from 21.5, because I'm sure there would have been some broken bricks or whatever, or God knows what else.
Yeah.
But one thing is, well, first of all, you have to quarry this stuff. You have to get this out the ground. That's a lot of tons. You know, I would like to know how much 22 million bricks weigh, or 21.5 million bricks, but that's, you know, how much does a brick weigh, or how much do those bricks weigh?
Probably 2 pounds, you know.
Yeah,
you'd have to say maybe a pound, 2 pounds.
Right. So you're talking 40 million pounds, which is about 20 million kilograms, which is, what's that? That's, let me do my mathematics. What's that, 20,000 tons? No, 200,000 tons.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and the billet, and really, I mean, I don't know what the change is on the years as far as, I don't remember a month that they said they stopped. They started in May. Yeah. Started in May of 29, and they finished in 34, but I either I didn't write down the month or 34. So, you know, you're talking about roughly 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I do industrial construction, and, you know, we build some of these production units, and it takes 2 years to build to build a unit with all, you know, advanced stuff that we have now. So, you know, that's quite a feat of work. And, you know, you might have 2,000 people, construction hands, working on that unit that'll take 1.5 years, 2 years to build. Yeah. You know, and so the amount of work is unreal if it's true. You know, and that's why it doesn't seem to be true.
Yeah.
But you know, on this picture here, like if you look at the arches and everything, it looks, to me, it's like you were just getting a glimpse of the top. You know, like there's more. You know, like we were saying, it goes lower, goes deeper.
Yeah.
When you're looking at
that could if you took the wall away on the right and on the left and just had that where your cursor is now, just had that bit there, you know, that would be a bridge or an aqueduct, Victorian time, probably Brunel built it, right? And that's an old dried up canal somewhere in the north of England. That would be, you could use that picture. You could use that picture for that as well. It's literally the same, but it's just of course in the confines of a star fort or bashing fort, as we call it, right? But at the end of the day, that has clearly been used for something else because it's so similar to other types of buildings that we're told were used for something totally different.
Exactly.
So that's the kind of, you know, the speculative dot connecting that I do there. But I mean, it's not to say that's true, of course, but I think it, you know, more likely is than the official narrative anyway.
Yeah.
What did it, Eric? What did it feel like when what was the vibe like? You know, the energy.
Because of me and how I'm like a little kid when I see stuff like this, it was great. That was the vibe. Yeah. You know, of me just, you know, going through all of this and exploring it, and you know that I don't know exactly what you mean by, you know, vibe, or, you know, if you want to expound on that, what you know, what you're looking for as far as it just feels like I didn't get any sensation like y'all are. Maybe I just wasn't looking, you know, so much. I was just dumbfounded by the bricks and how massive it was, you know, and you know, I didn't see it as something, you know, forgive me, you know, for maybe not having as critical as an eye when I was there the first time, but you know, I was just thinking it as a military fort. You know, I didn't see nothing that made me think it was, you know, anything else. You know, but you know, it was a fun time, and you know, I wasn't looking at it with a skeptical eye. You know, when I saw it the first time. Yeah.
Like you're looking at it now more, I would say.
Well, I mean, 21.5 million bricks, and you know, producing 50,000 bricks a day and getting it there and all of that. I mean, that sounds pretty ambitious.
You know, absolutely.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Just the amount of bricks is you know, in the 1820s and 30s, you know, everything would have to be by sea. You know, it would have to be absolute Herculean effort. Well, with thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people in my mind to try to get something like that done.
Yeah, Yeah, and you'd have to be. Oh, I won't even go there. But I mean, to have to manage all of that would be an impossibility. Yeah, and like I said, these constructions are everywhere, all around the world, either in the shape of this or whatever. But the use of bricks is definitely everywhere. It's commonplace before the time that they should have been used really to this extent. The interesting thing is, it all comes into the early 19th century again, Ellie, that we talk about, right? The 1810s and 1820s, right? So it's all that time where that we think really the civilization, as we know it, our personal one, that's kind of where it started. So, and then we move into them from that era into the sort of the exhibitions, the world fairs, and the introduction to new information, to the new civilizations, i.e. us, and the indoctrination thereof, you know. But that's another story. We could go off on a tangent there. But yeah, I just found it fascinating, absolutely fascinating, mind-blowing.
Yeah. I mean, like I said already, the only thing I can't get around my head is the amount of work it would have took to just do that in 5 years.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like transportation, and obviously the actual, well, of the bricks and the sourcing of the bricks, everything, and obviously manpower. You could say, hands on deck, and the tools, everything, absolutely everything. It's just stunning.
And you caught a nice blue sky that day as well. But yeah, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Amazing building.
Yes.
And it looks very, very old. I would suggest it looks much older than what we're told as well. For me personally.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, we have aqueducts and viaducts in England that we're told the Romans built that look younger than this.
Yeah, I remember. I remember that video. It was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good shot of them doing the arc with bricks. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, why is it this? When you think of the whole structure of it, the shape, the design, it's just...
And we don't even know the original structure, do we? Because we only seen part of it. They're probably so some of it's missing. And certainly the most important elements that would maybe give it away are definitely missing.
Yeah.
I think, but that's just my personal opinion, really. But yeah, it's fascinating stuff, Eric. Is there anything else you wanted to maybe elaborate on while we have you here?
Ken got a question that in the chat, but you'd probably know this a little better than me about star forts. I haven't really looked into that and what they might mean or what people are saying too much.
Right.
But about the Bastion star that we were talking about. I don't know if you know anything about that.
A little bit, Ellie.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, right. Well, yeah, star forts, as far as I know.
I'm just trying to see if there's questions in chat.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, I'll talk about this one then. And I think the star forts, as far as I'm aware, well, first of all, they're all symmetrical from above. Yeah, secondly, they're everywhere, and a lot of towns and countries, whatever, have tried to hide them, right? I mean, there's lots of towns in England that are built on star forts. If you look at the old blueprints or the old sketches of the towns, you'll see outlines of star forts. And you'll see them all around the world. There's a content creator called Paul Cook, for example, who lived in Malta in the Mediterranean here in Europe. And he did a lot of footage, and it's very similar to what you're showing here, the Pensacola thing. Star fort, of course, they throw a few cannons in there, a bit of concrete, and everybody thinks it was a castle. But yeah, you see these star forts all around the world, and the idea is that it was to do with energy and sound frequency and that sort of stuff. To do with energy, right?
Energy.
Sorry?
I would say, because looking at when you
would say what, Ellie?
Energy, vibrational energy, and everything. Because when you're looking at them from above, and you see the shape of them, the design of them, for me, it just says it's energy. Absolutely,
Yeah, and the one thing you also find about these star forts is either there is water there or there was use of water in the immediate vicinity as well. So like you see here on these images, for me personally, very clear to identify that there once was water there and on that complex, either within the walls, outside the walls, whatever. But I think they must have used the movement of water, the shape of it, whatever they did with sound frequencies. I don't know how they manipulated it, don't know. But I think that's where it's going. And, you know, excuse the pun, but that is where it's at.
Yeah, and I thought the fort itself, the being to definitely.
Yeah. But that's as far as my knowledge in terms of how you could manipulate water or use those shapes or those dimensions to do something with it. I have no idea because I'm not knowledgeable enough on that topic. But I know a lot of people have put out some really good footage and some information, you know, using their own electrical know-how or their knowledge of how that sort of stuff works, whether it's circuit boards or whatever, and then they bring that in and say, well, this could be that or could be that. But I'm not too sure is the answer. But I certainly don't believe they were ever meant as castles. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I'd go as far as to say that for me is a certainty.
What's that about castles? What did you say?
That they weren't meant as castles when they were built.
No, they weren't.
No. I know. That's as far as I would go in terms of being decisive and saying 100%. Well, I would say that 100% they were never meant as forts to hold away the what were they defending themselves from? Oh yeah, the Brits. Yeah, of course. Those naughty, pesky Brits are going to pop over the Atlantic again on their 3 wooden boats and take over continents. God, they were clever.
I don't know. The U.S. is kind of doing that now.
Yeah, you don't have wooden boats, though. You have aircraft carriers and the use of radar and all sorts. They're nuclear powered. In those days, yeah. How did they even eat? Yeah, we're just going to pop over to the States. It's only going to be a 3-month boat voyage, Mum, but don't worry, I'll be all right. You know, absolutely crazy. So there we go. So that really was some. I was just going to say, Ellie, sorry. I was just going to say that was some footage that Eric put out that he kindly allowed us to use for this podcast, and to also get him on to at long last get to know him and talk to him, and B, to gain a bit more knowledge around it and to raise more and more questions. Not that we don't have any, right? Yes. Eric, any last thoughts on what on that before we let you go?
No, I mean, I think we've covered it all. I don't want to reiterate stuff 100 times about the bricks, but you know, that's the biggest thing for me is wrapping my head around that is very hard. So
that's where I am right now. Eric is bricks and the amount of bricks that are being used to build various builds and stuff, and all like the whole, you know, looking into them, sourcing them, making them, you know, transporting them and everything. And then when you look at this fort that you've shown us today and the amount of bricks that we use there, it just boggles the mind. Absolutely. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, when you start to get up numbers like that, you know, it's like them, you know, people talking about, you know, flat earth and stuff, and you know, in the billions of trillions of miles away this is and that is, you just get, you know, it just gets into lunacy.
Yeah.
It gets to a point where it becomes impossible to verify. So again, your trust in authority gets called upon, and people tend to then lean towards that way of thinking, which is I'll trust the authority rather than ignore the rules and actually just go out and question some stuff. And question them on you know, and question stuff on your own basis, on your own terms, and not on the terms that other people are suggesting you should be questioning things on, right? So I think that's the key to this. This is why Ellie and I are doing this, really, more than anything else, is to expose the lie, because it's about the lie itself, as Ellie so poignantly put a little while back. And people have to understand that this covers every topic almost under the sun. We can say under, can't we? Because
Yeah.
it is above us, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, that is really the crux of the matter. We're never going to pretend to know or to find out a way of getting to the bottom of who built these, how they were built, whatever. We're never going to ever know that, ever.
And you're fine with that.
I'm fine because I have to gain acceptance around it. Otherwise, I'm going to end up tearing my hair out.
Exactly. You know, I was just talking. I have a friend that lives in London. We talk every now and again on the phone, and you know, talking about this the other day. And you know, I choose my words carefully in saying this. I don't believe anything that I hear on the TV or that comes through media.
Right.
I don't believe any of it. Some of it could be true, but I don't take none of it at face value. Absolutely nothing. And that's where I've been for over a decade.
Well,
Yeah.
Eric, let's have it right. If you had a family member lie to you as often as these clowns lie to us,
Exactly.
right, you would have banished them from your family decades ago. You wouldn't want anything to do with them. So if you think about the insane behavior of humans as a collective to always go back to pathological liars, for me, exceeds all concepts of logical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's madness.
Well, what they call that syndrome when you have
Cognitive
empathy
dissonance,
for
or the
when you have
Stockholm
empathy
syndrome.
when you have empathy for your captor.
Stockholm syndrome.
Stockholm syndrome.
Mm.
I think people really, when it comes down to it, I think people really want to be told what is right and what is wrong, and don't take, responsibility to think for themselves.
Yeah.
Because if they don't know something, they automatically just have a default. And even though they know if they've been lied to or whatever, they just kind of think, wow, well, that's too big of a lie. That's surely they wouldn't lie about this, or, I don't know what it is. It's to me, it's spiritual, because people just believe, like you say, even though they know somebody's lied to them 10,000 times. It's just
and
something that's hard to understand about our nature.
That is hard to understand about our nature. And whilst I understand that people have to make concessions and you have to go, you have to do compromises to get on in life, and we have to all enter the slave system to get on and earn money. I get it all. I get it.
Yeah.
But I've got to a point now in my life, most certainly, where I pay less and less attention to that, in terms of, how can I put it? Not dropping out of society necessarily. That's not what I mean. But certainly any decisions I make in terms of buying into anything at all, or partaking in anything or with anything at all that's authorities connected in any way, shape or form, I'm kind of trying to keep it down to a minimum, right? Because
kind of like you're going to use the system when you have to, but you're not a part of it.
Well,
you don't see yourself as a part. You see yourself as outside the system, mentally. But you use the system because you have to. Yeah. Right,
but not from the standpoint of a rebel without a cause, but from the standpoint of somebody who has serious questions and has woken up to the fact that actually I think I should be starting to feed my daughter with some of this information so that she doesn't go through 25, 30 years of deep sleep like her dad did, me. Right? So I quite like her to be a bit more awake by the time she hits her 21st birthday than I ever was. And this is the key. This is where we have a responsibility, those of us who have kids in our lives, let's say, to get to them and try and inform them a little bit, because you ain't going to get it from the school system, because they're all under the same orders.
Yep.
That's the problem. And half the teachers don't know they're lying. That's because they don't know themselves that they've been lied to. Yeah. And that's how it happens. That's how it works.
Well, the teachers know. You see, teachers don't. Nothing against teachers personally. I'm not. Got to be careful, don't you, what you have to say sometimes. But teachers, to me, I feel teachers have never actually left the school environment. That educational kind of environment. They've never left it. They've not ventured into maybe how we have in life. Many of us, and also they're so indoctrinated through that path. They really truly believe that what they're teaching is factual truth. That's it. And that's it. And that's how they see it. It's a matter of fact. It's there in a book. black and white. There you go. It's true. So that's it. You know, I mean, you think of it. Me this conversation yesterday. You know, when you go to school, a test, you know, it's basically pigeonholing kids, all these SAT tests and everything that they do with kids. But also, you know, it's a case of like a memory test, isn't it? If you can remember everything, you know, on certain subjects like history, and if you can remember everything and you get it all right, then you'll get an A star. If not, then you need to try a bit harder. But all it comes down to is, can you please remember that, what we've told you? That's your history. That's it. And there you go. And we were talking about this yesterday, like I say. But no, teachers are completely institutionalized in the basically what they believe their teaching is the truth.
Absolutely.
Some of them, I'm sure,
Yeah,
there's some question it. I'm sure there must be. There has to be a way.
Yeah, and I think some of it, like we talk about Stockholm syndrome. I think some of it is, and you know, teachers and especially a lot of people around me. It's more the place where I live is kind of a more conservative. I think a lot of people. I think inside they know something is wrong. Inside they know that this is not really right. What's going on, whether it be lying or the way that they teach, or inside of a system, or what's going on, they just don't want to turn that corner in their mind. I don't know if I'm articulating what I want to what I'm trying to say here, but
Perfectly, Eric. Perfectly.
okay, a lot of people, especially if you want to take like this thing that's going on for the last 2 years,
Right.
there's so many people around me because of the state I live in that's more down to earth conservative, that don't believe the narrative, but they don't do anything about it.
Right.
You know, they don't want to turn. They don't want to do anything. They want to just go to flow. You know,
Well, it's this attitude of looking towards the neighbours to see what they're doing, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's
and,
true.
And,
that's true.
Well, yeah, it is, and it's like towing the party line, as we would call it here in the UK, right? And that's it's an old yeah, right. So it's an old political sort of saying, right? But the fact of the matter is, that's the way it is. It's herd mentality, and this is the problem. So it's trying to encourage the youth to sort of say it's okay to question stuff. And when we say it's okay to question stuff, we don't mean chaining yourself to a fence outside the White House or Downing Street in London, or chucking paint at the Prime Minister's car when it drives past. That's not what's meant. What's meant is, you know, figuring it out and trying to figure out a way of maybe counterbalancing it, even on a small scale, if possible, if at all possible. And, you know, you're not going to get it by going to the education minister and banging on the door going, we want the school curriculum change. That's not happening because they are under orders from above. So the only way to get at it is under the underbelly, as it were, and attack it from there. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, the only thing I've ever seen work almost in my life, being in construction, we was at a few places where they gave everybody a raise of a certain amount of money on a job that we knew the client was getting. The client was given to the contractor we were working for, and they didn't give us the whole raise. So literally everybody at lunch said, nobody's getting up. Everybody's going to sit, and we're not going to work till we get them $2. And I've seen that happen a couple of times in my life. And within an hour, both times they got the money.
Yeah,
so
I bet.
There's definitely, if you can get to a point where the majority of people or almost everybody stands up, man, there's real power, because I've seen it.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, if you look at obviously the revoking of the mandate in the UK, you know, in England, and that, and for healthcare workers and that, Eric, there again, people stood up, people rallied, people went out, Sven did, I did, we all did, and it was, you know, it obviously had an impact, you know, and they had to obviously review that and revoke it because they knew that the people were just saying, no, enough is enough now. And we did, a lot of people did.
America didn't get to that point. America never got to that point, you know, of like the UK did. I followed, you know, a lot of what happened in Europe, and I think y'all was about the best country that stood up and said, you know what, this ain't gonna happen. But America didn't get to that point. But if America does, it's just a different situation here than in Europe.
It is.
If things ever get that bad here, it'll blow up beyond, you know, I think what would happen with y'all.
I think, yeah, I'm not too sure about that, but I think one thing's for sure. I think they do whatever works in each individual country. Hence, they box us up in different nations and mentalities and ways of living, right? Because then that way you can affect that population, that local population. So the Germans, that will work there, but it won't work in England. So we do it slightly differently. But yeah, absolutely. Like you guys in America will roll your film stars out, and that seems to work. Anything media, anything that's Hollywood seems to work in the States. People pay attention, which is madness in itself. Because I mean, do people not understand the concept of show business? The hint is in the word, right?
Yeah. America, and y'all know this, I'm just going to, America's so divided. You know, it's not like Europe. It's just not. When they roll out Hollywood stars, anybody that doesn't follow that stuff or of a more conservative attitude, it doesn't even register. You know, but it'll register with what they call in this country the liberal left. You know, and that's what's unique about America, I think, than the rest of the world. It's so divided here, and if that's planned, of course. Yeah, it's so divided here. It's unreal.
But it's also very media laden, the whole thing, right? And I've never been to the States. You know, I've never been to the States, but obviously I know people who are from there and all that. But the point I'm making is like, yes, it's going that way here in the UK as well. A lot of people are dependent almost on their media outlets. So whether it's their social media or whatever it is, but it's that multimedia interaction, or that what we're being fed on a mass scale that is used to control folk all around the world, control their perceptions, control the narrative. Because when you do that, you control the people's thoughts, quite literally.
And in America, you know, from the people I've talked to in Europe, that I know, America's been tremendously more, I don't know about tremendous, but we've been a lot more propagandized than y'all. Because the American way is watching TV, you know, and watching media, I think much more than in Europe. That's why I think y'all were more effective at protesting than here. One of the reasons. America is so propagandized and so much further along than what I see like the UK or France or anything, because it's just they buy into the media, because we're a TV media driven society. It's getting away from that. It truly is. It's getting away more and more from that. But this country is just I don't know. It's so divided. It's unreal.
Yeah. Well, I think you would find similarities in a lot of countries. Maybe the deficiencies in this country might be more elsewhere than it is in the media thing, but certainly we have similar stuff over here. People will watch political debates on TV like it matters and all that sort of stuff. And you think to yourself, God, you guys need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture here, because, you know, but
one of the reasons why, I'm sorry.
Go on, Eric.
No, I think one of the reasons why you didn't see as much in the U.S. too, as far as protesting and stuff, is we're a very different government. And y'all know that, because the states have a certain amount of autonomy themselves. We all have our own constitution. We all have our own legislature. In America, people don't know this. The local sheriff has jurisdiction over federal. So there's a lot of different ways and good ways that this country was set up that makes it harder to make this a federal system so they can take over and do whatever they want.
Right.
And a lot of people in America, what we was waiting for, what I kind of got is we were waiting for our Supreme Court to make a ruling on getting the medical device, and of course it was shot down by them. If it wouldn't have been shot down by them, I'd have been interested to see what would have happened.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But we didn't get to that place.
Well, I didn't realize the sheriffs were that powerful. Now I know why Bob Marley was so worried when he sang about shooting the sheriff. I get it now. But,
they do. Now look, they when the feds come, they try to take over, and they do all of their little things. But by law, the local sheriff has the jurisdiction in their sphere, in their county.
Well, every time I think of sheriff, I think of Dukes of Hazzard. But there you go. I'm showing my age.
Well, go on. Sorry, Eric. What were you going to?
No, I was just going to say a quick little thing. When all of this happened 2 years ago, our sheriff came out and said, "Don't call him, don't get in touch with him for nothing." As far as enforcing all of this stuff.
Wow.
Where I live, all of the police and everything said, don't call us. So they were against it, is what I'm trying to tell you. So we didn't go through a lot where I live.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I can't say that was my experience of the last 2 years here, unfortunately. But that's another story. Well, there we go. So Ellie has put up the email address that you guys, anybody who either is watching now or will watch this at a later date or whatever, please feel free to get in touch with us and send us any footage that you have, and and we'd gladly get you on here, just like with Eric now, and hopefully we'll get you on again, Eric, to talk about stuff, because I think there's some good conversation we could have, moving on, building on from this Pensacola one, that we could maybe elaborate on in the future. Ellie, what do you reckon? Yeah.
And I think we should do maybe just a stream just on Star Forts as well. Really go into that more. Definitely, Eric, definitely do come back on, because you're very interesting and you're wonderful to talk with and everything, and listen to you, to hear what you've got to say. It's fascinating stuff, and I've really enjoyed this today. And seeing the video, seeing the video and everything that you took, and that you were happy to share that with us and come on here today. I'm ever so grateful. So thank you very much. Very much.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate y'all having me.
Yeah, same goes for me as well. I really appreciate it as well, and hopefully we can get this get it together again another time soon. I really hope so. Yes. Was there anything else you wanted to say before we kind of wrap up slowly, Ellie, before I sort of give out the final thoughts?
I'd asked for questions in the chat, but I've gone through it. But everybody's been really supportive, and they've been commenting some great comments from everybody. I'm still not used to putting the comments up yet. I will get to grips with all of that. I'm just still learning everything on this. So bear with me on that one. But Ken was obviously, he pointed out earlier the quantity of bricks made where they made, the transportation of which we were talking about, and Eric spoke about. So I think everybody, all of us, where we're looking at this and questioning the narrative, we are all at the same sort of standpoint. Is that the right word to use? We're all thinking the same, raising and having the same questions and thoughts, and so we will go further into it as we delve in more deeper, and hopefully Eric will come back on and join us, and we're going to be meeting up, aren't we, in about 2 weeks, you and I?
Well, the plan is that I'll be coming up to Liverpool, which is, I'm looking forward to that, because I've not been there for a while, even though half my family are from that area, but I can't wait to go up there. So you and I are going to be then going around having a look at buildings that, like Eric was saying earlier, similar with me, I'm going to be seeing Liverpool through totally different spectacles now, because last time I was there, I didn't look at it like this. I did not. I did, you know, some of the buildings that we know of, like the Three Graces and stuff. I can't wait to look at all of that with the critical eye now. So that's what we're going to be certainly doing in the next couple of weeks. And also we've got a couple of videos that are going to be coming out in the next week to 10 days, something like that, depending on how we have the time, because we've got Easter coming up. Easter is next weekend, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. I also have a personal thing going on within the family at the moment, that over the next few weeks, maybe month or two, it's going to be, I will be obviously doing the streams on a Sunday with Sven, but there may be times where we may not, you know, there may be one day or a day here or we were just going to see how it goes, aren't we, Sven, over the next couple of weeks with different things. But
absolutely, go with the flow.
Yes, when we meet in Liverpool, we're going to be, hopefully we'll do a live in Liverpool where you can all see the cathedral, the Bond box. We'll show you
Say
the
that
Three
again,
Graces.
please. You got off there.
We'll do docks.
Yeah.
The Three Graces. We will show as much as we can, share as much as we can, and yeah, it will be exciting. So I think that's the 25th of April, isn't it?
It is 25th through to the 28th, and then we'll be looking at all these buildings and the Anglican Cathedral that I'm really looking forward to looking at, because I'm going to see that through different eyes now. And that is, if anybody wants to take the time, if they have 5 minutes, just look up Liverpool Cathedral. It's the Anglican Cathedral, and tell me how they built that, please, somebody.
Stunning.
Right, on that note, and finishing off with the mantra of, if walls could talk, wouldn't they have stories to tell? Wouldn't they just? On that note, Eric, I'd like to thank you again wholeheartedly, my friend. Great to speak to you at long last, and we must stay in touch. Honestly, we really must, and you know, maybe we can come up with some initiatives moving forward. I'd like to say thank you to everybody watching on and who watch later at a later date. And thank you for supporting our channel, of course, the Where It's At channel. It's in its infancy, but, you know, we're going in the right direction. Yeah, and really on that note, I'll say goodbye, and I'll leave you with the closing words if you'd like to, Ellie.
Just everybody keep doing what you're doing, and we shall see you all again soon. And a massive thank you again to Eric for doing this and joining us today, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, your weekend.
Absolutely. So until then, everybody, don't forget, it's all right to question things, always.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so on that note, it's goodbye from them.
And it's goodbye from him.
All right. Thank you very much indeed, everyone, and ta-ta for now. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.